Okay, so in this video we are going to do modeling a human ear. Just like with everything, it really helps to start with a template. So this is going to be our ear template. And very similar to the head template, we're just going to build this thing in 2D. And then we're going to start shaping it in 3 dimensions. This one's a lot easier than the last one, so most people like the break. They feel like the ear is much easier. All right, so I'm going to get going. The folder for this project is in the public folder, and the ref folder, and it's right here, my human head ear. So you can just copy that and then work from there. I'm going to use the template image that's inside of there, and so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to go into Maya here, and in the side view, I'm going to put my reference plane, so I'm going to rotate it up 90 degrees. Oh, that's in the front. I want side, so I'm going to go this way. There we go. And then I'm going to scale it up. Scale on this, I'm not too worried about it because when I get it imported into the scene with the head template, I'll fix all the scale stuff then. So for now, I'm just going to kind of make it the standard, same size as the perspective grid. And then for lighting, I'm going to turn on my two-sided lighting so I don't have to worry about face normals. And then I'm going to right-click and say Assign New Material. And I'm going to put a Lambert material on there because I need a reference to work from. And so this ear template that I'm using, I hope I'm crediting the right person. I think it's Ryan Kittleson came up with the initial template, and then I liked it, but it had some problems. And so I went in and fixed it a little bit. And so this is Ryan Kittleson's ear template plus Joel Thornton's tweaks. So if this gets on YouTube, I won't piss anyone off. Well, I'll still piss people off, but I gave proper attribution. All right, so I'm going to go in here to the template, and I'm going to hit the 6 key, and then I got to rotate this thing 90 degrees. And then I also want to move it back from the origin a little bit so that when I create my polygon, it's not coplanar with that plane, which is annoying because then you can't find your polygons. You guys learned that one yesterday. Okay, so now that I have this, I also want to template it or reference it and put it on a layer and name the layer. So I'm going to call this ear ref underscore L for layer. And now I can get started. So same deal as the head template. I'm going to start with the Create Polygon tool. So I'll just start right here, make my poly. I'm going to change the shading to X-ray so I can see through that. And then I got into multi-mode yesterday, and I'm going to keep using that. So I'm going to extrude. And so to extrude here, I'm just selecting the edge that I want, holding down the shift key, and then grabbing this little yellow manipulator here, and that allows me to extrude, which is fantastic. It's kind of similar to the way 3ds Max works. And then in multi-mode, the way it works is you can select any component, a face, an edge, or a vertex. The trick is you have to wait until it highlights in red, and then you can click on it, and then it makes it selected. So that's the only thing that takes a little bit of getting used to. But once you get used to it, it's pretty cool. All right, so I'm going to keep going. I'm going to select my edge. This is what happens, though. If it gets too tight, your icon actually gets in the way of your selection, and that gets a little annoying. But if you zoom in, it pretty much solves it. So, you know, with every tool, there's always going to be something wrong with it. So see that my move tool is getting in the way of that edge, which is annoying. So it's really important to start with this type of modeling here that I'm doing, where we draw a picture of the mesh right on top of a photograph. This is called edge flow modeling. And what you're doing in edge flow is you're trying to predetermine the minimum number of edges you need in order to get a shape. And so I've spent some time here figuring out the minimum number of points that I need in order to describe this very complicated shape. And someone asked the question yesterday about, well, how did you determine that template, right? And the answer to that is just years of modeling experience, unfortunately. And for me to teach that like right away in a beginner class is really not feasible. So if that bothers you, just my answer to that is just you got to practice more, right? So you have to model more stuff, and if you do and you use my techniques, it'll start to make more and more sense, and you can start doing these on your own. So in my intermediate class, we actually do edge flow diagrams, and I explain more about how to do these. But in a beginner course, it's really not quite yet appropriate. So I tend to save that for these. It's just like exercise and learning workflows for you, and then later we talk about how we arrive at this after you've gotten some experience under your belt. It actually makes it easier to understand. So you got to look at this like akin to when you were in math class and they just gave you a formula, which I hated that. I always wanted to know how the formula was arrived at, and they always looked at me like I was crazy. And so this is kind of akin to that. It's like, don't worry about how we did this, or just take the formula we're giving you and do the problem. So if you can accept that, you'll be great. So there is another way to do this. I think I'll talk about this today because I get in here and it gets kind of complicated. And so I don't know if there's really a bunch of savings from me extruding edges. So I'll show you this. You can actually, I'm going to turn on Snap to Vertex here. And I'm going to go into Create Polygon Tool. And you can actually just draw these. So I'm going to turn back on. I'm going to use the hotkey. So I'm holding down the V key, just turning on Snap to Vertex, and I'm going to snap to vertex when I want to. And in this method, you can actually just make individual polygons, just drawing them kind of manually, and it goes pretty fast. And where there's a vertex, I snap to a vertex, and when there's not, I let go of that key. And so, and this allows me to basically just draw these polygons in. And then the reason I'm snapping them to vertices is because I just want them to be coincident. So that Coincident just means that the vertices are right on top of each other. And what that'll do for me later is that'll make welding them easy, because if they're right on top of each other, I can use a very low weld threshold and merge them without any issue. Now the downside to this method is that the Create Polygon tool will orient the normal in the direction that you make the polygon. So I actually don't even know which it is, but if, for example, if you draw your quad here in a clockwise manner, it'll have the normal facing forward, and if you draw it in a counterclockwise manner, it will have the polygon normal facing the opposite way. So just be aware of that, because what I'm going to end up with here, because I'm not being faithful here about always drawing in a clockwise fashion, is I'm probably going to end up with some of these polygons, or faces as Maya likes to call them, some of these faces going opposite directions, but I will show you how quickly we can fix that once we're done. So what I have here is I've drawn these polygons as individual polys. In my edge flow here for the ear, there is actually one triangle, and I strategically place it inside the ear where it's hidden and we don't ever have to touch it. And so that's one of the mods I did to that guy's template. It was like I strategically placed a triangle on the inside of the ear so that we could get some better control of the shapes outside the ear, and I like mine better. So there we go. And so what I have here is a bunch of separate objects, except for I didn't draw this one, didn't get my try in there. Okay, there we go. So what I have here is the outside mesh, which I created by extruding, and then I have the inside mesh, which I created by using the Create Polygon tool, and I just made a bunch of individual polys. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to merge them all. So I'm going to hide this, and I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to say Mesh Combine. And now if I turn off two-sided lighting, you can see that one of my polygons is going the wrong way. So I actually did a pretty good job, I think. Where is it? So only out of all of those polygons I made, only one of them I got reversed, so that was pretty good. So I can fix this by just going into face mode here and just saying Mesh Display Reverse. Or another way that I think is easier is I can take everything. So I've combined all the polys. I can go into vertex mode, and then I can say merge vertices, merge, and I make sure I give a decent threshold, so I'll go 0.1. So now all of those vertices are welded. If I hit the 3 key, I get that weird, that means that that face is backwards. But now that all the vertices are welded, this thing allows me to use this feature, which is Mesh Display, and I can say Conform, and what that'll do is that'll take all the normals and it'll face all the normals in the same direction, provided they're coincident, meaning that they have coincident vertex. So if they don't have coincident vertex, that operation doesn't work. But if they're all welded, it'll look at the majority of the normals going this way, and it'll take the minority normal and it'll face it the same way. So now we have this thing all normaled up. So if I hit the 3 key, it's going to look good. And now we have an ear template. And I could do this. I could say Mesh Display Reverse if I wanted those normals to flow this direction. And now we have our ear template. So I'd rather just use two-sided lighting though, because that's annoying. All right, cool. So I got my ear template. I'm going to move my ear off of this guy so I can actually see the underlying shape now. And I'm going to show you guys how to shape this. So these polygons right here, make up the outer ear, which is just kind of like a tube that goes around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the edges in the middle here, and I'm just going to pull those guys out. All right, so like that. And I can pull them out a little bit more. All right, that's pretty good. And then I'm going to grab these edges on the outside. Oops. And for these guys, I'm going to extrude. I'm going to switch to world mode and extrude those back a little bit. And then I'm going to extrude them again. And then this time I'm going to scale them down, which is kind of effectively building the back of the ear. And then I'm going to extrude those one more time. I think, you know what, I'm going to err on the side of giving this thing a little bit more shape than normal. Something happened to my plane there. Okay, so I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. So what I want is I just want that ear to be kind of rounded. So if I hit the 3 here, we can see that it's kind of rounded and it's got a thickness of a human ear. And then I'm going to extrude it one more time. And for this one, now I can get pretty aggressive. And this is all going to become like the cartilage that attaches to the skull. And then I'm going to extrude again. There we go. And so if I hit the 3 key, it's like starting to look like an ear. Okay, the next thing I want to do is I want to grab, let's see, these, or wait, I can't really do that yet. So there's 2 stages to the shaping of this ear, and I'm breaking my video up into smaller, I'm breaking this process up into smaller chunks now. And so the thing that I was about to do, I don't want to do until the next iteration. So for our template ear base mesh, we're just going to keep it right here. But the next thing I do want to do is I want to grab all of these edges right here. It's those 2. And I want to extrude those guys in. So I'm going to grab that, extrude it in, and I'm going to scale it down a little bit. And what we're building here is the inner ear canal. I'm going to push that forward. And this inner ear canal can just go to nowhere, because once it gets into shadow, everyone's going to believe that that goes into your brain. They don't, your character's brain, they don't really need to actually see it go in there. Unless you're doing a medical project. In that case, then you have to model all that out. But for us, that's going to look like an ear canal just fine. And all that's going to be in shadow, so no one's going to see that. So the illusion will be complete. All right, and then the next thing I want to do is I want to grab these vertices here. All right, yeah, I think I'll do edges. I'm going to pull these back a little bit. Pull those down a little bit to kind of just give it a little bit of shape. And then that's about as much as we can do at this resolution. So I know it's a bit of a letdown. Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. And then here, because the ear kind of flattens out here at the lobe, I'm going to like pull these guys out. And then here's where it goes into the canal. So I'm adding a little bit of shape. I pulled these guys back just a little bit. I think I'm going to pull all of these down here, except for those. There we go. Just a hair. There we go. To give that a little bit more depth and dimension. And I think that's going to be a pretty good starting point for our ear template. Remember, the initial template on pretty much everything we create is always going to be an approximation of the shape. So it's never going to look right until you add more resolution to it and add more shape. And so I'm going to pull this one out a little bit. There we go. And so for now, it's going to kind of look like, you know, the Fisher-Price version of a human ear. But when we subdivide it further, we're going to be able to shape it and get all of the shape that you see in there, pretty much. All right, so that's the ear template. And then the way this works is when I'm done with it, I'm going to save this first, save the scene. And so I will call this, I also started labeling these so we know it's winter 19. Oh, crap. Save as, I fat fingered it. Winter 19, ear, template, and then save that to the desktop. All right, cool. And then now what I can do is I can open up my head mesh from yesterday. So head template level 1. And a bunch of you guys were trying to mirror this yesterday and weld it up. So I saw a number of people being like, oh yeah, cool, my first head model. I'm like all excited. So I'm gonna duplicate special here and let's see. There we go. And I'm gonna go ahead and weld it up. You're actually jumping the gun here. So if you did this yesterday, you're gonna wanna throw that away. It's actually more efficient for us to model the head in 1/2. So we're gonna just leave it in half. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna duplicate special and we're gonna create something called an instance. And what the instance does is we're not gonna weld it, but when I pull the vertices on this one, the other one's going to go with it. And so it's going to allow us to basically shape the head on both halves at the same time, which is a huge time savings. And so, and we're not actually going to make another duplicate head and weld it for quite a while. So the final stage of modeling a head is called the asymmetry pass. And that's when you actually replicate them, weld them, and then add asymmetry, like offset the eye a little bit, maybe put a scar on one side of the face, change the facial structure a little bit on one side. But you don't want to do that until the very, very end. So here's what we want to do. We're going to grab this guy, and now I'm going to import my ear template. And of course, I built the wrong sided ear. So what can I do? I can just mirror it. So I'm going to say edit, duplicate special, mirror that guy in. And then there we go. And then I'm going to bring it in and we're going to rotate it a little bit. I usually like to do this in ortho view so I can get a better look at it. There we go, something like that. And since I'm not actually going to merge it in there yet, I'm not too worried about it. But I do want to scale it appropriately and put it approximately where it's going to go. So it's going to go something like that. And then for your ear size, there's a range. It's actually in the reference I gave you guys yesterday. I don't think it's in here. If you go to the human head, here it kind of shows you that the ear, these are always generalizations because everyone's different, but in general, Male human ear would be, the lobe would come to the bottom of the nostril, and the top of the ear would come to the middle of the eye. So that's approximately how big you want to make it. And so I can do that really well in my side orthographic view. And so I can be like, okay, that's the middle of the eye, so I'm pretty close. And there's the bottom of the nose. So I'm a little bit high there. So this ear is just a little bit big. So I'm going to scale it down, and then there we go. Now I'm within the realm. And then again, it's always up to the artistic creative license there. So it's like, if you make it according to my illustration there, where it's like, this is generally the size, and it doesn't look right, then what are you going to do? You're going to scale it up a little bit until it's to your liking. Oh yeah, my guy's got bigger ears so he can hear things. He's a superhero. All right, so there we go, and that's what we want. Now we have our head template ready to go for the next phase, which is going to be shaping. All righty.